Hello and welcome to DIY for Beginners, Episode 1. If you have a cold garage, we'll show you how to insulate and heat the garage for winter. Hello everyone, it's John from DIY for Beginners. Welcome to my garage. Today I'm going to talk about insulating the garage. One of the reasons why I want to insulate the garage is this is my brand new house, and it came with fairly cheap, very thin board garage doors. So it gets very cold in here in the winter. So I kind of wanted to warm it up a little bit. So I could, grow some plants in here throughout the winter and work in here in the winter without getting freezing cold. So there's two things I'm going to do. One is I'm going to insulate the garage doors. And two, I'm going to buy a heater and hang it from the ceiling and kind of point it into the middle of the garage so that it helps warm it up. So let's take a look. I'm going to show you my garage doors. So there you go. There's my garage doors. These here are very, very thin. So they let a lot of cold air in. I figured why not insulate these? So I started with, I'll show you here. I bought these here at my local hardware store. They're, what are they called? They're called Duraspan GPS. It's a type of insulation that kind of looks like styrofoam, but it's supposed to be better than that. And they come in different R values. If you don't know what R values are, it's basically the insulation factor or how much it insulates. When looking at these, I know they come in different R values. The ones I seen were R5 and R10. The higher the number, the more insulation there is. So I decided to go with the R10. The R10 is a little bit thicker. The R5 is a little bit thinner. And I guess they go thinner as the number goes down. So that's one of my insulation boards. And there you go. So it's about an inch and a half thick. Okay. And it's, if you can see it closely, it's like little styrofoam particles that are black. So yeah, this board here is twice the size in width and about that long. So what I had to do is I had to cut them in half to get them into my car, and it's the perfect size. It wouldn't affect the sizes that I'm cutting. Okay, so basically I took these styrofoam boards or Duraspan GPS boards. So what I did was I measured my garage door panels. Here I measured, there's a little lip here. So I measured from the edge of this lip to the edge of the other lip, so I know the width. And for the height, we went from the bottom of this folding part to the top of this folding part for the height. Once you cut them out, you may also have to make small adjustments for things that get in the way, possibly this. So what I did was I measured twice, cut once, and I went through and I cut all my panels. In regards to cutting these panels, at first it was recommended to me that I use an X-Acto knife or a razor blade to cut them. The only problem with that is these are very thick. Thicker than the R5s. So cutting them with a razor blade really wasn't effective. It took way too long to get through the whole board. You kind of have to do one side and then do the other side and hope they line up, or do one side and crack it in half, which works fairly well. But then I decided to try a hacksaw. The only thing about using a hacksaw on these, let me just get this for you. So there's my ancient old hacksaw. So the good thing is that, when you're cutting from the edge, hacksaw works really well until you get to this bar. And then you can't cut any further down the board. You can, but it kind of makes a mess. So I kept brainstorming, trying to figure out what I could use. And I started to use my, just my normal regular saw. There you go, one of these. Okay, I use that, nice and thin, nothing gets in the way when you cut through it, and it works really, really well as well. So I went through my boards, I measured, I drew my lines where I wanted to cut them to size, So one board did me 4 panels with a little bit left over for insulating small spaces. So I went ahead and I cut them, and here's what I ended up with. I'm not quite done, but I've done half my garage. So if you take a look, there you go. So that is my garage door, completely covered, windows and all. Okay. So that one, nothing. This one, everything's covered. Now, in order to put these up, I went ahead and I bought a special adhesive for these boards. It fits into a caulking gun, and it goes on one side of the board, and you stick it to wherever you want it. The only issue with that is if I ever want to take these off, it'll make quite the mess. So what I did was I cut the boards a little bit larger, width-wise and height-wise, so that they actually fit in without being glued on. So they're actually quite snug in there. They don't fall down. I won't lie, I made a mistake on one of them, and it was a little bit too loose and would fall out, so I had to improvise and cut another one to get it in there. In the middle, if you notice, so these are all my leftover pieces. Right? So I'm going to insulate the middle here. I'll eventually do smaller pieces for down here, because I don't use the handle to open the door. I have a garage door opener. And again, I'll insulate in there. This isn't the perfect solution because you're always going to get cold air in through these doors, like through the sides or through the top, or you'll always get a little bit of cold air coming in. But it should help a lot. So now, like I was saying, the upper ones are covering the windows. So I wouldn't want to glue those anyway, because I definitely want to take those off in the summer. Or if in the winter you still want to get some light in through those windows, then you can either cut around them, or I'd just leave them off if it was me. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the light. I'm going to put some lighting in here later on. That'll be in another video. And yeah, I'm just blocking the windows up for the winter. In between my garage doors, there was a hole, and of course, cold air would get in through there. So I went ahead and I used my spare pieces to cut them down to size and fit them in between my garage doors to help with the insulation a little bit. So one of the disadvantages to using this, I don't know if it's a disadvantage or just an inconvenience, is if you see, it makes quite the mess. So here, I've already cleaned it up several times, but there's your styrofoam particles from cutting it. This isn't particles, that's my floor. So yeah, it makes a little bit of a mess, but you're doing a good job when you make a mess. Okay, so we're talking about 2 things. We're talking about insulating the garage for the winter and heating it. So we talked about the insulation. I'm half done that, and I'll show you once it's complete. It's fairly easy, and it's almost done. Shouldn't take me much longer. Just so you know, the cost for me doing that, because it was R10. R10's a little bit more expensive. It cost me around just below 100 Canadian dollars. So yeah, I don't find that too expensive for getting my garage insulated for the winter. Again, the second part is heating. Now there's different kind of heating options. There's heaters that you put on the floor, heaters you put on the ceiling or the wall, and there's different types of heat. There's element radiated heat. The one I have is a radiated ceramic. Have ceramic bars in them, and you can get different heaters with different strengths. The one I have here, I'll show you it. It looks like that. You can get these everywhere. So it comes with the bracket for mounting to the ceiling. And then this is the actual heater itself. These slip into the brackets, fairly easy. This one comes with a shop light. And this cord here controls your heat. And I think this one has 5 different heating levels, which is fantastic. Okay, so a few things to consider when you're hanging one of these. It's fairly simple. The first time I had to hang anything on studs, I found a hard time finding the studs, but we'll go through that in a second. Like I said, the one thing to consider with these heaters that hang from the ceiling anyway are the cord. So the length of the cord, make sure it reaches. Make sure the heater is in a position where it's able to plug into an electrical socket. I don't suggest putting it further away and using an extension cord. It's recommended in the manufacturer's instructions not to use extension cords on these. I'm going to hang it above the garage railing, pointing down to the middle of the garage. So doing that, you have to consider a few things. One is make sure you don't put the garage door up when the heater's on. I don't park my car in here right now. I'm just using it for kind of like a man cave. So I don't put the garage door up unless I'm going out to the driveway. And so yeah, I'm gonna have to be mindful of that, because you definitely don't want that heater running and blowing on like so close to your garage door it could start a fire. So I wouldn't recommend doing this. Another options would be mounted below the bar, or mounted on the ceiling somewhere in the middle. I can put it up there because there's a plug up there as well. So yeah, I could do that, but you'd be hanging off ceiling studs. I chose to do it there. Okay, so when hanging this, what I did was I brought the whole thing up to where I thought I wanted it. I adjusted everything, made sure it fit, made sure my garage door wouldn't hit it, and I used a pencil, work pencil, and I circled where I would need to mount where I would need to put the screws in to mount to hold the mounting. So I did that first. I went up and I drew two little holes through the mount. So if you look here, so the mount's got several holes. Okay. This isn't very heavy, so I'm not going to use 2 screws and 2 screws. But I will. I am going to use one of these and one of these that hit both studs. Okay. So studs, if you've never done this type of thing before, and a few months ago that was me. Studs are 16 inches apart. So when you have the finished, if your garage isn't finished, it's really simple. You can see the studs. So I've tried a few different methods to find the studs in my walls. The first one I tried was I bought this cheapy stud finder. Basically, it's very cheap, very plastic. How it works is it has this button here. And basically what that does is you put this flat against your wall, and then you push the button, and then you move it in one direction, and then when it finds a stud, it'll flash a little yellow light telling you that the stud's there. It'll also tell you when you're approaching the stud, so it has little arrows on it. It'll point left or right when it starts sensing a stud. And then when you get, I'm not going to say right over the stud, but when you get close to over the stud, it'll go solid yellow. Now, why I say close to the stud is I find that, sometimes if I go one direction, I'll find the stud in a certain point. And then if I go the other direction, I'll find the stud over here. So I don't know if it's detecting the sides of the stud, but you have to keep in mind that just because this goes off, you're not necessarily right dead center on the stud. When you do find a stud, it's got this little black button up here if you want to use it. And basically it has this little knobby that sticks out. So when you're on the wall and you find the stud, you can push that button down hard and it makes a little tiny dent in the wall so you know where the stud is. Now, this is a very cheap version. They have more expensive ones. Some people swear by them. Some people hate them and never use them. There are other ways to find your studs. Okay, so another way to find where the studs are is measure from a stud if you know where one is, or from the edge of a door frame, or from the edge of a wall. So a few things we need to know is studs are usually about an inch and a half wide. So the middle of the stud will be 3/4 of an inch to the middle of the stud. So what I'm going to do is, and we've established studs are 16 inches apart. So if I do 16 inches and 3/4 from the edge of a wall, that should take me to the middle of the second stud. Okay, so there's a stud at the very edge. I'll show you right here. So from beginning to end, I've got 17 inches. So 16 3/4 would be right there. Okay, so at 16 3/4, I would take this, put it to the edge of my wall. Now there should be a stud right in that corner. Okay, there's always studs in the corner. And if I go across to 16 3/4, that should be another stud. Okay, we'll put that to the test a little bit later on. I'll show you that it's actually the truth. Now, that's measuring from the edge of a wall. If you're measuring from, you can also measure from a light switch or an electrical plug. So this here should be the middle of my stud. So if I put my measuring tape up against that, across the wall, whoa, 16 well, not 3/4 anymore, but you get the idea. Yeah, so right there, 16 3/4, just under the 17, should be the middle of my stud right beside that stud. Okay, and again, we'll test that out later. The other option is measuring from a door frame. Again, the same thing. Door frame has a stud on each side of the door. So I would measure from here, middle of here, and I go 16 3/4 that way, and that would that's how I'd find the other stud. And it did work for me in this case, as I hung my slap boards over here, and I had to put screws in every 16 inches to hold that board up. So that's what I did for that one. Okay, so how I'm gonna figure out where this is gonna be mounted. This is my my mounting plate. The heater actually just slides and clips into it, and then a securing screw goes in each side so it doesn't fall down on me. But I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put this up in the ceiling. So I've already attached the heater to this and brought it up here to make sure it's gonna clear everything. And like I mentioned, I made those little pencil holes to mark how far down from the ceiling I want to put this. So it turns out that I want this about 3.5 inches from the ceiling. So it's going to go somewhere like that. Actually, right there. Okay, so that's where my mounting bracket's going to go. So that's how I know how far down from the ceiling I want it. I want to drill my holes. But now the question is, how far across do I go to hit two studs? Okay, so on this here, the two outer screws for this bracket is 16 inches. So that's the two screws I'm going to use. So how do we find a stud? Like I mentioned before, this is kind of in the middle of my wall. So I don't want to. I could, but I don't necessarily want to measure from the edge, 16 inches, then 16 inches, then 16 inches to get over here. So I decided to try my stud finder once again. What I did was, so the plug is right underneath where, or fairly close to where I want to hang the heater. So the plug, like I mentioned before, is a stud. There's a stud right next to it. So, and I made a mistake. So when I was showing you the plugs and the stud isn't in the middle where the screw is, okay? Because that screw goes into a metal bracket. The stud is actually on either side of the plug. So there'll be a stud. So if you have your plug, there'll be a stud running up this side, or a stud running up this side. So it's kind of trial and error. So what I did was I kind of followed up to the ceiling from the plug. I used my stud finder, and sure enough, it went off. It beeped. So I pushed that little button and it marked a little hole in the wall. I measured. So that was about right here. Okay, so right over here is where the first stud is, and the electrical plug is right underneath. So I measured 16 inches across from that dot. Okay. So I measured 16 3/4 of an inch from that dot. And then I put another dot over here, and then I measured 16 3/4 from that, and I put another dot over here. Okay. So that's where I think the studs are. Again, I could be off. We can't tell because we can't see behind the wall. And my stud finder, like I said, isn't always 100% accurate. So trust but verify. So I trust the stud finder was right this time, but I need to verify. So what I did was simply, because my heater's going up here, and I'm not going to see behind it, I don't mind making two little tiny holes with a nail, hammering it in, and if it hits a stud, I know the stud's there. If the nail goes easy peasy right into the wall, then we know we've missed the stud. So in this case, I hammered a very tiny nail, a long tiny nail up here, and sure enough I hit a stud. And then 16 3/4 inches over, I did the same thing, and I also hit another stud. So hey, we're off to a good start. And my stud finder actually worked this time. Okay, so I know one stud is here, and one stud is here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my 3.5 inches down from the ceiling where those holes are. I'm going to pencil in a little mark, and then I'm going to pencil in another mark, and now I know where to drill my holes. There is my electrical plug. Okay, so at first I assumed that the stud was on the right side of that plate, and I was correct. So what I did was I followed that up to this area here. I used my stud finder, and if you look very closely, right there, you see a little dot in the wall. That's the hole that my stud finder made when it started to beep, and then I pushed the button to mark that location. So then again, I measured 16 inches over to here, and I put a dot there with my pencil, and that's where I hammered the little tiny nail in to make sure that it hits the stud. If it missed the stud, I'd have to go a little bit right or a little bit left, because I know the stud should be around this area here. But in this case, that should be dead center. And then I measured 16 inches over, and my other stud, which I found with the nail, was right there. So now I know where my two studs are. Where are we here? All right. So one is here, and one is here. Okay. All right, so that's my width. All right, so now I need to know how far down from the ceiling. So like I mentioned before, I said 3 inches. So I took my ruler, or my tape measure, and I measured 3.5 inches down where that stud is, and that is where I want to drill my screw. I put my screw in, and drill my hole for my screws. Same over here. I did 3.5 inches down, and that's where I want to put my screw to hang up this heater. Okay, so let's drill these holes and set these screws. So these are the screws that came with the mounting bracket. So these are the screws that'll hold the mounting bracket in place. And following the manufacturer's recommendations, I'm going to drill a pilot hole for these screws. It's a lot harder to get a screw into, especially a stud, if you don't drill a smaller hole first. So yeah, drilling a smaller hole is called the pilot hole, and it just makes screwing in the screw much easier. So I got my handy drill here, my 1/8 of an inch drill bit, which is fairly small. It's a little bit smaller than the actual size of the screw. So let's drill these into the wall, and then we'll put in the actual screws and the mount. Okay, so the drywall is fairly easy. I hit the stud. Okay. I've drilled right into the stud. There we go. So that hole there is our official hole for the first screw. And then I'm going to do this one over here. And lo and behold, I've hit what feels like to be a metal stud. I can't screw through a metal stud, and it's probably not recommended to hang anything off a metal stud. So I'm going to have to go to plan B. Okay, so my last attempt, I failed. Actually, when I was nailing in my nail, it hit a stud, but I didn't hammer it in all the way or enough to find out it was a metal stud. So now I've drilled holes in my wall. One is a good location for a stud. The other one was a metal stud. So now I got a couple holes in my wall that I want to fill up. That's another episode. So stay tuned for that. I'll show you how to fill the holes and repaint and sand it, mud it, make it look okay. So what I did was I continued on down the wall towards my garage door because I got some room to play with here. So this is the first 16 inches. I put my nail in, hammered it, and it hit a stud. I hammered a little bit more, got stuck in the stud so I know it's wood. And then I did another 16 inches over, and same thing. Hammered my nail in and I found the other stud. So now I've got two hopefully good studs, and I'm going to drill my holes with my 1/8 of an inch drill bit. There's one done. So we have a success. Two good holes, found two good studs, and now we're gonna put the screws in. Let me just change my drill bit head. So I took the drill bit out and I'm putting in my handy dandy screwdriver bit. Screwdriver. All right, so first screw, like I said, these pilot holes make it so much easier to put these screws in. So according to the directions, we gotta screw it all the way in, actually not quite all the way in, leave the head about 1/4 of an inch away from the wall. All right, so let's try that. There we go. So that one's about 1/4 of an inch out. And we'll do the second one. All right. Okay, 1/4 of an inch out. So now let me go get my bracket and we'll put up the bracket. So one thing I forgot to mention is, and this is very important, I'll probably put something in the comments, is when you're measuring these studs, it's usually a good idea, even though I don't like them very much, it's usually a good idea to use the stud finder, even if you've already found the holes, or even if you've already marked where you want them, before you drill into a wall, using the stud finder, or they have electricity finders that you can use. Go along the wall and make sure there's no electricity wires running near where you're going to be nailing or screwing, because the last thing you want to do is get blown off your ladder because you've hit an electrical wire. All right, that would be a bad thing. Okay, so please do not do that. All right. So now that I got my bracket up and the screws most of the way in, I got it leveled. I got it exactly where I want it. I'm going to tighten these screws. One. There we go. All right. Nice and sturdy. I ain't moving anywhere. So a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of mistakes, but we got it up. And I'll show you how to, like I said, I'll show you how to fix those mistakes in another video. Let's try mounting our heater. All right, I'm back. Here's our heater. Also, always be careful on your ladder. You never want to fall off your ladder. All right, so these simply clip in. There's one. Look at that. So again, this is adjustable. I can put it at any angle I want. That should be okay. I might have a problem with this isn't the angle I originally planned to do it on. I'll probably have to do it this way. The reason being is I don't want my garage door, the top wooden part of my garage door, hitting this heater. Okay, so there we go. We got it mounted. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this over and we're going to plug it in. Get out of the way. Okay, now that we got it hung up, I'm going to plug it in directly to the socket, to the electrical socket, not using an extension cord. There we go. It's adjustable. I can move it to different angles. I suggest you don't point it at something that's going to heat up, so I'm pointing it away from this bar. And then let's see if it works. Has a little light on this one as well. This is the second from the top, heat-wise. There we go. You can probably see it turning orange now. And whoo, that is warm. I'm gonna have to play with it to figure out which setting is best that I'm not, setting my garage on fire. There's high, and we're off. Okay, so another job well done. We've got the heater hung up. Did a little test just to make sure that we're okay clearance-wise. And up, my garage door is up. And the cords are hanging down. Let me shut it, and you can see it's actually still there. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so thank you for joining me today in my messy garage. But I'm good to finally say that with the help of the heater and my insulated doors, I should be fairly warm throughout the winter. Please make sure to check out my my Growing Plants for Beginners channel. That way you'll be able to see if I'm nice and warm this winter or if I'm working in my basement. See whether this is a success or fail. So there we go, fully insulated, heat going. Garage door clears the heater. We're good to go.